For this podcast episode, I wanted to speak to three important people at the Association for Contemporary Jewellery, who, for their 25th anniversary, have organised a conference titled Beyond Silver, which ran from the 1st to the 3rd of July 2022 in Exeter and online. During the conference, I connected with collector Linda Lambert, educator Bridie Lander, and the chair for the Association for Contemporary Jewellery Terry Hunt. So, we are gathered at the 25th anniversary conference of the Association of Contemporary Jewellery. Congratulations on this silver anniversary. So to start, the conference controversially is called Beyond Silver. Can you expand on sort of the theme of this conference and the title and how that relates to everything here?
Okay, maybe I can contribute to that. Beyond Silver, because the ACJ has always been about something that is more than the traditional aspect of jewellery, i.e. maybe silver manufacture. And we believe that contemporary jewellery should be much more than just that obvious traditional concept of jewellery in terms of materials, use of materials, or anything else about jewellery that one might regard as traditional, and we need to move on from that. So beyond silver, and also the aspect of beyond silver, beyond 25 years. We're living in a society which has changed, obviously a lot over 25 years. So part of the contributions that we were hoping within the conference would be looking at the future after, say, our 25 years. What happens in the next 25 years, for instance?
Yeah, that's amazing. I have a follow-on question in that, because the lineup that you've chosen for this conference reflects these times and the challenges we face. Do you feel that jewellery artists can make meaningful contributions to these shifting, perhaps, paradigms? And do you see any examples of that, perhaps in the conference, but also outside?
Well, if jewellers can't do it, who's going to? I suppose fine artists might think that they're making a contribution in that respect. Maybe that's more self-indulgent. Whoops. I don't know. I mean, obviously, some contemporary jewellery can be seen as self-indulgent. But I like to think that in this conference, we've seen a lot of possible themes and directions and other possibilities for analysing what it is we do and the possibilities for the future.
I think what happens within the jewellery field is it's brought back, unlike fine art or design generally, it tends to be brought back to the individual, because it is about the body in one way or another. So yes, I think all fields at the moment are contemplating what our futures are. We've been going through sort of massive changes, rethinking, recontextualising our areas of studies, but I think what makes the jewellery field a little bit different is that it personalises it, because it is more about the body or the person, whether that's the individual person or persons collectively within a community, how we engage with one another, how we intersect with one another. So I think that maybe that's the difference within a sort of contemporary jewellery field.
Because there are other crafts like ceramics that are doing a lot of the same, pushing boundaries back, what you can do, having the narrative and all.
And textiles and fashion.
Yes, and this is such a great place, Britain, for it. I mean, it's exciting. But I think you're right. It's the personal thing. If you're wearing it, that's resonating, and you're sending out messages to people, whether you realize it or not, and maybe incorrect ones. But the fact is, it's you, and it's on you, and you're saying something which makes it just that more, I suppose, visceral. It's you. You know.
In my presentation this afternoon about meanings and messages, I'm actually going to mention that aspect about a possible difference between artists' intentions and viewers' perception. Because artists gave us a description of their concept and theme with their piece when it was submitted, but it tended to be too big to actually be able to show alongside the jewellery. So the brooches are just shown on their own with the maker's name and the materials. So the casual viewer, shall we say, has not necessarily any idea of the basis for the production of that piece, which can be interesting because people can have a different assumption about what this is all about. And they have to pay, I'm afraid, £5 to get the catalogue, because in the catalogue, of course, you have each individual artist's concept statement. Yeah, I mean, I would like to have some sort of discussion with people about, where this has gone wrong, or where people have made an incorrect presumption.
Is it gone wrong?
Well, I was just going to ask that.
Well, no, I don't. Well,
I don't think it.
I'm going to mention one instance where it did go wrong. Yes, but I don't have a problem with that. It just happened to be my piece. That was all. But anyway, I'm actually referring to that in my presentation. But there is an argument that with contemporary jewellery, in a way, the maker's intention is not necessarily what it's all about. It can be the viewer's perception of that, which is one of the reasons that maybe the viewer appreciates that piece for, and actually likes that, and maybe even purchases that. It's like, well, yeah, but I like it because of this, A, B, and C, which could be different to the maker's idea.
Make their own association.
Exactly, they make their own association. So, it's not that important necessarily.
And I think that's where it is quite different from maybe other practices in fine art and design, because you have to leave work open to being interpreted or then repossessed, as you like, by somebody else and their own interpretations and their own attachments. So it's really quite interesting reflecting on, for example, Sian's talk about those connections with senses of self, but also that point that she also made about it being very much a gifting economy. So the artists themselves in these fields, in these craft fields, are gifting themselves, letting those attachments of their own, allowing to have them reinterpreted by the new possessor, if you like.
Yeah.
I might put in another question following on from this. Jewelry is highly connected to humans, right? But in this world, or in our current debates, we're really discussing sort of the dangers of thinking, us thinking that we are the center of everything. Do we feel that us jewelers could have an interesting take on these sort of discussions, debates, and if we feel that that's happening, is there any examples, or do you feel that is an area that we should start to think about maybe a bit more?
Perhaps jewelry in that sense acts as a marker for us humans to recognise patterns outside of ourselves. I'm thinking very much as makers. I'm beginning to see and recognise that people are acknowledging that they have to take into account the senses from our larger environment, not just ourselves. So I'm thinking in simple terms, yes, as you say, jewellery is not relevant in one time, but later on it seems somehow appropriate. So is it acting as like a marker of us acknowledging the sort of changes within our environments, those subtle sort of energy flows and stuff that we're not consciously aware of. So maybe it's acting in that way.
And I guess the presentation just now, where you have sun worshipping, and maybe we can use it as a narrative to bring certain topics to light. But I really like what you say, and I wrote down direct contact with materials, because there is a world out there which we covered yesterday as well, the metaverse, where we are potentially no longer connected to any physical reality, but perhaps the making and the understanding of materials which have been formed, or we are forming ourselves, that practice is actually a connection to nature as well, and how that could be used to reflect on those powers that are beyond
something other than ourselves. And I think there is a conscious awakening, and I think it's very prevalent in artists, designers, makers who are actually interacting with materials. They're having to pick up a sensitivity of those materials and respond to them. So, which is very different to perhaps managing an artifact within a digital space.
And industrialization disconnected us more from, you saw certain processes, a single thing, and then you're no longer part of the bigger picture. But being a jeweler is often part of it.
Or a maker having to negotiate with the material. Yeah.
Don't you think the materials used are reflecting current concerns also about the climate and all, and what method, which might be well tried and used, really is using too much of our natural resources, and should we be thinking of something else? And even, well, I know somebody that picks up glass that's been in the ocean and it's got all soft and round, and using that. I mean, I think it's a reflection of our society as well as us as individuals. And I think that's important, because the jewellery, with any luck, is going to last a lot longer than us.
And there were some wonderful examples over lockdown, and people in isolation actually having to improvise with the resources around them, or actually finally just walking out into their environment and responding to it and picking up new sensitivities with it, which was just delightful to actually watch unfold in lots of ways.
I agree, and I think in actual fact, and maybe unfortunately in a way, we are too close to it now to really perceive what is going on in terms of our reaction to our current situation. It would be really good to be around in 100 years' time and to actually see how that has developed and how it's been affected by, climate change and all that sort of stuff that's been going on. I mean, obviously one hopes mankind is still around in 100 years' time, but, to have that overview, like the art historians have now of, 100 years, 500 years
what the
before us.
Enlightenment meant back then.
Sorry?
What the Enlightenment meant back then.
Well, how did they feel? How did they feel when they were going through that? Were they enlightened? In the Enlightenment? Yeah.
But, in 100 years, a lot of the elements that we use in jewellery now might no longer exist.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, we might have gone off in another direction completely.
Yep.
And that's part of the excitement about it. It's really a field where innovation is happening all the time, while still having the basic, stone on a ring. But almost anything else can go also, which, as a non-jeweler, I find absolutely exciting and fascinating, and watch this space.
The ACJ has organised this conference. It's the first in-person event, I think, after COVID, for us as a community to meet. how important are these types of events? And when you talked about sort of, wanting to reflect, is reflection important for the association?
Well, yes, it's important. And we obviously don't host conferences regularly. We haven't done that anyway. We've done, I don't know, probably half a dozen or something, over the 25 years. They have been successful because of the reflection, because of any event like this is useful because of bringing people together. So reflection, happens when people come together, I think, more so than with the current, which has to happen over the last couple of years, online communication. I'm, as probably others, I've been so surprised when I've been working with people online for a couple of years to actually meet them for the first time. And it's fantastic because, of course, by definition, people are real. And the real experience of people is so much better than actually an online experience. And so in terms of your question, it's, for me personally, the coming together of people is actually essential. Now, one thing which I might add on this is that I'm a great believer in one of the things that the ACJ does, which is we establish regional groups throughout the country. Now, the whole point about regional groups, which of course has fallen apart in relation to this over the last couple of years, is because it provides opportunity for localism and for groups to meet, whether it might be in a pub around a table or whatever, and therefore create their own sort of subgroups within the ACJ and do a bit of self-help and mentoring and all that sort of stuff, which you can do far easier when you're individuals meeting together in person, and that's when the sort of the social thing comes in, and it can have so many benefits and that was something which I felt very sad about that had to go during the pandemic. We obviously want to revise that now. Now the pandemic's over, we can re-establish those groups, and so important.
Well, it is, because the thing is with these conferences, and I think I've been to almost every one, it's only a comparatively small group of people that can afford to do it. And, well, when we were down at Westdean, I remember some people came only for the day. They literally could not afford to stay there. And yet, and that always seems a shame. The conferences are exciting, but they do tend to be, I was going to say hijacked by academics. Sorry, folks, not being in this thing. But those are the people that have looked into it seriously, and there are all sorts of reasons why they want to be seen.
They have a professional need to follow that research agenda and clock up a presentation at a conference.
He said that beautifully. But, it does, I'm very aware that there's still an awful lot of people out there that it would, if we could get to them on a practical level, as well as lifting their head above the parapet with just day-to-day trying to make it. I mean, as we know, a lot of jewelers cannot afford to just do jewelry. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent.
No, but I think that's where, having conferences online have actually, in lots of ways, made it more accessible. That sort of knowledge exchange can certainly happen. But unfortunately, what doesn't happen, which is what happens when you get groups of people together, are just those incidental conversations. And that's quite difficult to facilitate online.
Yeah.
I've been to some conferences online where they've tried to facilitate it, but it's a bit of an artifice. One of the benefits of having actually gone into lockdown and having to do conferences online and learning how to use all of those, is that we have been able to facilitate connections that perhaps have been a bit restricted before.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of actually learning now. I think now that we're out the other side of taking all those great aspects, recognising the great aspects that we had before, and how can we combine them.
I agree, very much so.
I want to go back to something, Linda, you said earlier. You are not a jeweller, yet you are part of the Association for Contemporary Jewellery, and I found that the lineup there, it's very diverse subjects. You've given a space, a platform to various perspectives. Is that important in the association, to be inclusive, that you don't necessarily have to be a jeweller, that you can access the theme from a variety of perspectives?
This was seen to be very important right at the very beginning of the formation in 1997. Well, when it started as a concept in 1996, at actually the first jewellery conference in the country, which was done by Norman Cherry in Newcastle. Norman had a sort of like a plenary sort of session at the end of the conference. Got all these interested people, actually the majority of the people who were actually at the conference, and expressed a desire, and just check that out amongst all the people, to actually sort of come together, rather like SNAG. But basically, the whole point about this was that it was in our name. It's the Association for Contemporary Jewellery. Now, I remember at our previous conference, I and Norman were talking about this, and Norman said, I admitted that a lot of people forget that. And a lot of people that you're communicating with, or they're writing about you and things, they say, the Association of Contemporary Jewellery. No. So Norman said, yeah, so I got that wrong, didn't I? because people can't appreciate that difference between of and for. But we are definitely for contemporary jewellery, and that is so inclusive. And by definition, it has to be inclusive. It has to include educators, academics, collectors, makers, gallerists, and
just the curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wearers. It's such an exciting area, and for so many people, it's closed off. Oh, they can go in to Monsoon and accessorize and buy something that's been. But the excitement of seeing something handmade for you, it can be, and it opens a whole new world of what's possible and what's going on. And that was one of the things. I've come to it from publishing, so I was trying to spread the message anyway. But it went from being a subject like the ceramics, the glass, and the printmaking that I also did, to something that I began to feel very passionate about. And that's what we want to get out to people. Okay, you can get cheapy-do thing at Accessorize. I do.
Other stores are available.
Yes, well, but, you don't have to spend thousands, but you can talk to somebody. It invests all sorts of personal things. And also, it's just a field that I find is so exciting because pushing the boundaries out all the time. The techniques, the materials you use.
I think a lot of students come to it as well because it's an opportunity for individual expression.
Yes.
That seems to be a real focus for them.
Mm. I want to follow on this. So there was a recent article in Climto too, reflecting on why contemporary jewellery hasn't taken off, implying that not a lot of people know about it still, implying that there's quite a few people who aren't making a living with their practices.
It's not new at all.
No, it's not. No.
How do we change it? Can it be changed?
Certainly a lot of the galleries, if anything, have disappeared, haven't they?
And the institutions in the education.
Yes, I mean, I've been asked, where do you go to train? And people have said to me, well, try your local evening class.
Yeah.
That's not the sort of comment that one would hope, but
Yeah.
it's...
We're in for much more challenging times, I fear. Yes, looking at these wonderful talents that come and they're making fantastic stuff, but I see them out and about, and even while they're in college, it's like, well, why aren't you wearing your own work? If you're making it and you're proud enough to exhibit it, then why aren't you actually wearing it?
Yeah.
So is it because it is far too personal, far too confrontational? Is it easier to buy a painting or an objet d'art and put it on a wall or a mantelpiece, as opposed to then actually literally wearing something on your sleeve and exposing then your own aesthetic preferences out and about? So is it just a fundamental sort of sociological, or is it also the marketplace is a real challenge as well? You know, the fine art market is very well established historically, a huge marketplace, and I don't think contemporary jewelry, I mean, it doesn't have that same kind of cachet. It may change. I mean, what with now more investment coming from and more interest within sort of the narrative jewelry area within places like China, that may actually change. The more competition within the market for more individualized designs. Who knows?
I think there's a real gap in the middle. Mm-hmm. You get people who make jewelry, and I say that in quotes, that they show at a local arts and crafts show. It's local people. And the quality tends to be not the greatest, but, you know, they can sell a pair of earrings. If you go to something like the big craft shows near us, it's at Wisley or it can be up in town, more and more the jewelry seems to be at the high end of things, the expensive. And if you find somebody who's making exciting brooches, say, out of materials or necklaces or something, they're a rarity and you sort of leap on to them. But I don't think there are enough venues for that sort of thing to gently get people in and let them see that they can buy exciting stuff. Not that expensive, but that there are places. Because I live outside of London, and if I go up to town and I look at jewelry, you just see ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It's very expensive. And if somebody asked me, where should you go? Well, I could say contemporary applied arts. Sometimes the museums will have some little bits that you can buy. But it does, to me as a buyer, there don't seem to be that many venues. And is that marketing problems? I don't know. I mean,
do you feel there is also a bit of a value disconnect in our contemporary society where you have a handmade, let's bring it to another field, a handmade mug, which takes time and materials and resources in a studio space compared to something mass-produced for less than £1 that is, in the sense, similar as an item in its function. However, there is a very big difference between our understanding of this piece. If you're a maker, you understand what the process is, but as a consumer, you might not have been in contact with that.
That was a huge problem in ceramics. Sorry, I'm jumping subject, but I can remember being at a talk where a potter was saying how much it literally cost him to make a mug. You know, all the time, the money and materials. At the same time, Woolies, so way back then, you could buy ones made in China for a fraction.
So how can we as a field address these, I think, societal issues, in fact?
I'm just wondering whether we need to address it, actually. Sorry, this isn't a considered opinion. It's just...
We're having a conversation.
In direct answer to your question. We could say that if contemporary jewellery isn't that popular, okay, so what? Those that want it, know it, and can have it. And they can get their choice, they know where to go to, they know the galleries they can get it from, or the individual
How do they
designer
know?
makers.
Running the ACJ.
That is a very good answer.
Do they even know the ACJ
No,
exists?
yes, okay,
You
it's a
see,
good
that's
point.
the
It's a good point.
problem. I mean,
But surely, if somebody was artistically aware in relation to the type of clothes they wear, the choices that they make with the clothing, with the accessories, surely they could therefore investigate.
And I do wonder if society values are going to start to change, or if they're not actually already in the process of changing.
Yeah.
What with our now experience of production chains breaking down, people are becoming a bit more aware about what's perhaps involved in a manufacturing process, how it impacts globally, ecologically, carbon footprints. Maybe now we're beginning to become a bit more conscientious about where the materials come from. Maybe we are going to become a bit more aware about the time and effort that's invested in actually manufacturing goods. We might be prepared now to actually spend not so much little and often, but once and well.
mm-hmm.
That also implies that designer makers might be more inclined to look at those issues themselves and be offering stuff which does offer alternatives to that.
I'm going to add one more question in here, because there is critique on disciplinary thinking. And we as a jewellery field are a discipline, and we are gathered here to discuss the discipline. And operating in silos, there could be negatives and benefits. What do you feel are the negatives and the benefits of us gathering as a discipline? And do you see there is opportunities for change? Should we facilitate change to think transdisciplinary or multidisciplinary?
The danger is the echo chamber.
Sure.
So I think absolutely we need to embrace a transdisciplinary practice. We need to be listening to other perspectives from other fields and other cultures, and becoming much more embracing of wider conversations. And I think, yes, we can hold on quite jealously and possessively about our particular area, but I think ultimately you'll just end up suffocating. So, yes, really do need to be engaged across fields, and I think experience that a little bit from the different papers that we've been hearing today. Sort of people are looking as much as they can within and without other fields.
Definitely. I think that's always been the case, but I think it's probably more relevant now because of what's been said about sort of global events, but also events that's taking place within the globe, the ecological aspects. I think it's more relevant that we are, as a discipline, are concerned more about our environment, the effects of our environment, the effects of what our work is doing to the environment. And I suppose it goes back to a previous sort of aspect of how we can make people aware of that, and through our pieces.
Well, it's pieces, but we're also, as an organisation, we've got a magazine who does focus on various areas and spreads the word.
Yes, we haven't spoken about the benefits of being a member, really.
Feel free.
We sort of,
Is this your marketing flow now?
well, I mean, broadly, we have actually espoused the benefits of ACJ, but not only do all the benefits that we've mentioned, come to one, but we do have a magazine, Findings, which is published twice a year. We also have an e-bulletin, which gives more sort of up-to-date communication, which is published monthly. And as I say, really, we have this, what I think will come back into itself after the pandemic. We have the opportunity for local groups, local membership groups, and obviously close to home and close to the physical experience that we're in the middle of now, literally, and that is the conference. And okay, I suppose we're only actually halfway through, but it's been fantastic so far. Terrific range of speakers, of the concepts and the stuff that's been delivered. And to see that the streaming, to actually talk to people in Hungary and the other side of the world as well, and it all comes over clear, sometimes even louder than the people on the platform, is really good. So I'm glad the technology is working, and everybody seems so happy.
But maybe this is, as I said before, maybe this is an opportunity to actually capitalise on what we've learned from being in isolation in terms of reaching out and making connections and trying to fill that gap that you brought up with that quote about, it's is it a dying field? How do we reinvigorate it? How do people get to know about it? So
exactly.
these small communities and these opportunities are terrific for those of us in the know, but how do we reach that out?
Yeah. If I hadn't gone into publishing doing these things, I'd probably still be walking over there right past all of you. It is breaking barriers.
And you wouldn't be wearing such nice jewellery, being a collector.
The beauty of jewellery is that it does get us really excited and we feel very personally connected.
Sure.
I found it interesting, Joe McAllister talking about taking things apart, because I was sitting there looking. That's my husband's grandmother's ring.
Wow, yeah.
And I've never met her, but the feeling of continuity is really quite precious. I wouldn't take it apart for the world, and I'm hoping
recycling is a very interesting topic, and in a way we've been, as makers, with a metal or a material that allows casting and casting and casting again.
Yeah. And sometimes what comes out is better than what you had originally, which is quite exciting too.
The conference clearly showed there are many facets to our subject that require discussion, contemplation and consideration. And I want to thank you and all the organisers of the event for making this moment and many other moments for reflection happen through the association. For now, I would really like to thank you all three, in particular Terry, Bridie and Linda, for speaking to me today. It has been a pleasure to hear your thoughts.
Lots of really interesting questions. Thank you.
Next month, I will be speaking to the two plenary speakers of the conference to reflect on their experience of the gathering and the topics covered. So watch this space to find out who they are. But for now, this was Sophie Boons for the BAJ podcast episode titled Beyond Silver with Terry Hunt, Bridie Lander and Linda Lambert. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.